I see things like this replacing traditional reporting. If I can just have a conversation with my ERP and say, hey, tell me the projects that have the highest amount of accounts receivable, or what's the current profit percentage or effective multiplier on this project, goes a long way to get data in front of people in a much easier way. And if it makes a project manager more effective, that's going to pay dividends as well.
Welcome to LaunchPod, the show from LogRocket, where we sit down with top product and digital leaders. Today, we're talking with Bret Tushaus, VP of Product at DelTek. In this episode, we discuss how DelTek built Dela, an AI agent framework powering everything from smart summaries to autonomous accounting, why AI is rewriting the role of product management and what leaders need to know now, and how Bret's team leveled up their AI skills fast with short, high-impact sprints focused on real tools and real problems. So here's our episode with Bret Tushaus. All right. Hey, Bret. Welcome to the show, man. Thanks for joining. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jeff. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, this will be fun. I'm stoked. We get to talk about some AI stuff, some product. You started out as an architect, the actual building big buildings and stuff, but now you find yourself in product. You've been at DelTek for 15 years, and we're going to talk specifically about how you guys built some really cool AI functionality there to move the team forward and how that has fit into product in such a vertical focused area. But first, maybe can you just give us the quick spiel on how did you go from being an architect to running product at a company like DelTek? And what does DelTek do exactly so people have that kind of context?
As you mentioned, I've trained as an architect, worked as an architect for about 5-6 years, and then sort of transitioned to the technology side of an architecture firm where I was a DelTek customer. During that time, got to know DelTek well, struck up some relationships there, and actually ended up, joining DelTek as a product manager 15 years ago. And the reason that they sort of relate is DelTek focuses on ERP and complementary solutions for project-focused businesses, and architecture firms fit squarely into the project-focused business area, as well as engineering, government contracting, consulting, agency. So that's sort of my history, what DelTek does and how I ended up at DelTek.
You went from being the customer to knowing the customers so well that you were really, really well suited to help them build great solutions for the customer. And it seems like it's been a successful decade and a half so far, which seems rare in tech, but it's always cool to see because you built up a lot of experience in this area. One thing that really drew me to this when we were talking early about maybe having you on was the idea that there are a lot of companies like this. And I think at times there's everyone knows about the hot, sexy, and Notion, OpenAI, all the very product-y companies. But you guys are doing cool stuff and we would be remiss to miss that. So you guys built Dela AI, which has been a very powerful way to kind of pull a lot of what the company does into kind of the next stage of efficiency and moving quick. And, what is it we always say? Using AI to move faster, be stronger, be smarter. So let's just dive in. Where was the start and kind of how did that come to be? And what did that development look like over the past little bit of time?
Yeah, it's been pretty exciting. And I agree. We're doing some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
And sort of the evolution is interesting because prior to ChatGPT and the onslaught of generative AI and all that, we had more traditional narrow AI capabilities in our solutions, but they were very specific, task-oriented, and very focused on specific functionality. And when generative AI hit the scene, just like other enterprise software companies, we started dabbling in various ways to leverage the technology. And it was kind of all over the place as the technology sort of took hold. And as we sort of honed in on the types of capabilities we felt we could introduce to provide value, we felt we needed this sort of overarching brand. And looking around at software and the various sort of AI companions that were out there, we wanted to brand it similar to how other enterprise software and consumer software were doing. And that's really the conception of Dela as our overarching AI brand, the digital business companion, as you mentioned. And it's not just one feature, it's a whole host of different features of functionality that all sort of fall under that Dela umbrella. So that's how we got into the Dela world. And like you said, we introduced some pretty cool and interesting functionality under that Dela umbrella across the entire product portfolio.
A lot of companies even up to current time have taken kind of the route of slap a chat agent into something, say it's AI, and now you're AI first or something like that. And sometimes it's the right thing to do, and sometimes it's not the right thing to do. You guys took a very focused look across the whole business of 4 very distinct pillars of Dell's capabilities. And with that, took a very nuanced look at what do customers really need? Where can you really add value with AI? Not just, we're going to throw AI on a name and say we're AI. Maybe first step here is let's go through what those pillars are and how did you and the team kind of determine, hey, these are the areas that we're going to get value.
The one thing I would say just foundationally off the bat, it sort of relates to one of the comments you made in terms of slapping AI on something from a marketing perspective and putting it out there. One of the things that DelTek has already been focused on, even before generative AI took such a mainstay, was what we call purposeful innovation. Anytime we talked about innovation at DelTek, we always prefixed it with purposeful innovation because let's face it, you can introduce tech for the sake of tech and it's not necessarily providing value for people. And we were very deliberate about that. We didn't want to bring tech to market just for the sake of technology. And we approached AI in the same way. So the pillars you mentioned, 3 of which are well established, the 4th of which is becoming established, as a little bit emerging in some ways. But we tried to identify those 4 pillars in a way that really was purposeful. And one of the first ones, not surprising in the generative AI age, is generating and automating what we call smart content. The great thing about the DelTek product portfolio is we have a massive amount of data in our solutions that are sort of the byproduct of our customers delivering projects. And we can leverage that content to generate proposals, to distill a large amount of information in a natural language way. So it really was the right place to start when generative AI came on the scene. In fact, we have this concept called smart summaries. And we know that a lot of people in our customers' organizations don't necessarily know what report to run or where to find information. So if we can just take information using generative AI and present it in a natural language way, that's going to save users time. It's going to save the step of someone going to someone else asking for information. So that's one of the ways that pillar has come to life.
That pillar, I feel like people often oversimplify because it seems like, oh, just summarize something or just pull a couple little notes or something. And it sounds easy. And I think likelihood is to get it 50% good is probably really easy to get it. But like, especially government contracts or on our end, we found, value in summarizing sessions, for instance, and pointing out to people the key areas within a session because you capture so many of them, you can't view them all. How do you speed that up? It seems like a key thing here has been quality though. How do you not hallucinate, but also how do you accurately pull out like what you really need to summarize and to get, like I said, like 50% to really good? You can probably just slap a OpenAI integration in, call it a day, work the prompt slightly, and you're good to go. But it seems like that's, what you're talking about. These things are probably pieces where you want high fidelity. You want people to trust it because you show 1 or 2 wrong things or false positives and they're going to walk away forever.
Yeah, I think you hit it spot on when you said walk away forever. Because that is a risk. Somebody uses one of these tools and it hallucinates, it doesn't provide a lot of value. And chances are they're never going to come back. As cliche as it may sound, that first impression is so important. So we have spent a decent amount of time because we have the smart summary feature in several of our products. And in each of the products, we spent a lot of time refining the prompts, testing with different models because, as new models come out and things like that, the responses change. So on one side of it, we are spending a lot of time refining prompts and testing, but then also obviously the data you serve up to a mechanism like this needs to be the right data. It needs to be delivered in the right way. So it's taken a lot of fine tuning to, I think we're well beyond 50%, top 20, top 10% with our responses. And I think even the part that maybe falls in that 10%, it's not that it's wrong. It's just not might be as valuable as some of the other stuff. So it could have been easy, but we wanted to make sure we were making a good first impression so that people continued to rely on this type of mechanism.
Okay, so that's one. And then, but it gets cooler from here even. So like, I think there's something around like project prediction or success prediction or something like this.
As I mentioned, DelTek serves businesses that deliver projects. So anything that we can do to help predict, ensure that our customers are being successful on their projects ahead of time, that's very, very valuable for our customers. So this is a little bit more on the machine learning and sort of algorithmic side of AI, but it definitely weaves in some generative AI capabilities as well. The whole idea here is, anticipate future outcomes, predictive, that type of thing. And there's several examples of this. As you might imagine, we have a lot of project manager customers and a lot of project management capabilities. So being able to have that line of sight out in terms of what's my estimate to complete profit, what are my projections from an effective multiplier perspective, all of those are lines of sight into whether a project might be going in the wrong direction and being able to course correct. But then most recently, we've introduced things like what's called a smart fit score. So one of the solutions we have in the market is called GovWinIQ, and it helps companies that do work for the federal, state, and local governments identify opportunities they want to pursue. And this smart fit score can look at their capabilities, compare it to what's in those opportunities and whatnot, and say, hey, you're 80% fit for this particular opportunity. It might be worth pursuing, or for these reasons, you're capabilities don't align well with this one, so you might want to look somewhere else. So that obviously saves our customers time just in looking around, but also in pursuing an opportunity that they might not be well suited for. Another one, we also have our DelTek talent solution, which is a human capital management product, and that has applicant tracking and recruiting and things like that. And like a lot of HCM solutions are doing these days, with generative AI, we can do sort of a candidate relevancy score. So on job description, based on those types of things, you can say, hey, these top 10 candidates are probably the ones you want to take a closer look at. Those are some of the ways that this particular pillar, predicting success, has come to life.
Looking at these two things, one is basically take data, summarize, and help people access data. The other is kind of the other way around, ingest and tell you if it's a good fit and make sure you kind of focus in the right direction. What problems did you guys run into here? Like back to the idea of, it seems very easy to get 50% good at these things, and 50% good basically just causes your product to fail. What were the pieces that really unlocked, like this really got us from 50 to 85% faster? Or were there no big aha moments? It was just constant iteration and training and just getting a little bit better every day.
I don't know that there were big aha moments. I sort of covered one of the challenges that we ran into, and like the smart summaries capability, we did that 2.5 years ago, I think is when we started with it. So you can imagine some of this technology was a little bit nascent at the time, and it was sort of not really knowing what to expect, and quite frankly, not knowing what to adjust. I remember I said before we were well below 50%. And I remember early on in smart summaries, the models would, if the data wasn't there, it would just make stuff up. It was creating projects that didn't exist in the system and things like that. So not necessarily a aha moment, but realizing that you really got to adjust the settings as you're using these models. You got to test, you got to refine, et cetera. I think we underestimated the level to which we were going to have to do that to make this stuff work.
There's almost a level of training some of these models. It was just like constant reinforcement learning for it. So I wonder if it was a similar process there, just like you had to just whack-a-mole through that.
Yeah, we've learned that we had to, if there was any, even maybe a little aha moment, we learned that we needed to be far more prescriptive than I think we expected to. So that's sort of similar to your comment on the reinforcement.
I found that in getting these functions to work, sometimes there are these like magic light bulb moments, and sometimes it's just diligent refinement. And usually it's both, or usually you don't have the aha moment without some very diligent refinement as well. But like we built what we call Ask Galileo, which is in our session replay analytics and kind of end-to-end product feedback connection. At this point, it is a way to query all this kind of non-structured data. And what it does is has an agent we built actually watch all these sessions and talk to you about findings from what would happen if you could watch 24 hours of sessions, but you could do it in like 30 seconds. And the interesting thing was, same as you talked about early on when we were testing it internally, it made stuff up. It told me metrics existed that didn't, and other data points didn't exist when I was like, I am looking at it right now and telling you what it is. And the biggest unlock we had was we realized we had to train it like you were onboarding an actual PM. So we call it now like an AI PM, but the unlock was we trained it like you would a PM.
Yeah, it's kind of the prescriptiveness comment reinforced, but even I think back to your last comment there, it's gone from entertainment to fascination. It was entertaining to see it was making stuff up. I mean, it's not what we wanted, but it was entertaining.
It's kind of comedic, yeah.
And then the fascination today of, okay, now that we've been more prescriptive and really fine-tuned and whatnot, it's fascinating what it's capable of. Absolutely.
Right. So it seems like the idea of kind of like intelligent exploration, or I don't know what you call this function actually. Do you actually call it Ask Dela, I think?
We do call it Ask Dela.
Yeah. So we call it Ask Galileo. Yeah, we talk about this. You guys call it Ask Dela. We laughed about that earlier. So how does this piece kind of work for the team or for users?
As you mentioned, the pillar is intelligent exploration. That's what we call it. But this sort of gets back to one of the comments I made earlier too. Let's face it, people that use enterprise software, there's a whole range of user skills and levels. And certainly not everybody knows how to run a report, how to configure a report, where to find data. Often people go to ask their accountant, their controller, whatever the case may be, when they are looking to find some information. So this intelligent exploration is really intended to help facilitate that better and make it so that people can find what they need through a natural language conversation without having to know how to run a report or go ask someone else. That's really what Ask Dela is all about. In fact, I don't think this is a novel idea for me, certainly, but I see things like this just replacing traditional reporting, because if I can just ask a question, have a conversation, if you will, with my ERP and say, hey, tell me the projects that have the highest amount of accounts receivable, or, what's the current profit percentage or effective multiplier on this project? Boy, it goes a long way to get data in front of people in a much, much easier way. And if it makes a project manager more effective or someone more informed in an organization, that's going to pay dividends as well. So it sort of pays dividends on multiple levels. which I think is huge. And that's really what our Ask Dela component is all focused on.
The chat is interesting because we, as an analytics company, we have had a lot of conversations internally about chat interface analytics. And as someone on my end, who I've run operations and marketing teams and been deeply involved in analytics for 20 years now, I always kind of go back and forth on this piece specifically. Because like you described, right, if you can just ask for the metric or the graph or the chart or the figure, that's obviously a lot easier. And it opens it up to people who would not necessarily be able to do it before without understanding how to use the UI to do that. What's your thought on, I have a theory that like power users are always, or for longer probably than not, going to continue to want to use some form of UI because there's always some weird, I don't know, every company I've ever been at has some weird little data problem or cleanliness issue that like, oh, we don't use this version of that field, we use this version of that field, or even in a UI, right, trying to like filter between break it down by this, now break it down by this. Like you can probably do some of that work faster in a UI potentially if you're going really deep in like a power user, but as a casual user, the conversational interface seems like 10 times better.
Oh, I would agree 100%. I mean, we're still going to have those power users that probably don't want the natural language conversation. They want to see things in a more traditional way. So it's a necessity to sort of meet both ends, definitely. I think as the technology evolves, I see being able to fulfill both needs probably through the same experience, if you will. Right now, maybe it's a little bit less towards the power user and more towards the casual user. But as these things improve and the capabilities and output capabilities improve, like I said, I think it can fulfill both needs pretty effectively.
One kind of general way we've looked at this specific piece is, can we, provide people the ability to do things that you couldn't do manual with this kind of chat interface? So like, can you instruct, for instance, the AI agent to watch 100 hours of sessions real quick? But there's also then, can you like build a chart? It's also every kind of novel question that's not going deeper on something, but is someone asking something new, is like, was this a chance for us to surface something we should have proactively? Like, should we look at this as a learning moment where we could have surfaced this and known to surface this proactively?
The way I like to look at it, I often talk to customers about this when we talk about this concept of intelligent exploration is, yeah, it's artificial intelligence, but it's also the intelligence of everybody that's come before you. So these large language models have massive amounts of data around how project managers operate and how project managers communicate, how you communicate with customers, what are good numbers, what are bad numbers, those types of things. So it isn't just about necessarily getting the hard and fast answer based on the data. It's also the intelligence that we can add around it. In other words, hey, this is a simple example, but hey, this customer's aging is over $250,000 and we're at 82 days. Boy, that's probably a red flag. Why aren't they paying versus a high AR amount, that type of thing? So it's as much about AI as it is about the intelligence of those that have come before us.
Those are the three kind of more mature aspects of what Dela AI is delivering. But let's get into the frontier stuff. It sounds like you guys have done some work kind of on the agent front as well, and maybe that's not as production ready or as mature, but I'm curious to see what are the use cases there. How does that look in a company as vertically focused as you guys are?
We've done some what I would call sort of more narrow-minded agents, things like filling in timesheets and expense reports and things like that. So very, like I said, very focused task-oriented agents. We're sort of expanding to or evolving to a bit more autonomous agents and a bit more, I love the recent term that's come on the scene, ambient agents. A type of agent that reacts to events and even engages with the users to make decisions or take actions along the way. I think a great one that we're very focused on and will lead certainly to other things is the concept of a month end close agent that defines the activities that are involved in it, detects anomalies, does some reconciliation, analyzes some subledgers, all of those types of tasks that typically go into, say, clothing an accounting period or a month, building that into an ambient agent that does certain things, analyzes certain things, asks you for help when it needs it, asks you to finalize things, because as you might expect, in a lot of the software that we deal with, human in the loop is absolutely critical. When I talk about an agent that does month-end close and there's accountants in the audience, their heads want to explode. So having a human in a loop with something like an ambient agent is absolutely critical. So yeah, this is like the fourth pillar that, not quite as mature, but we've introduced some things and are really looking to build out that agent framework and those more intelligent agents across the product stack as we speak.
We had someone from a med tech company on recently who talked about the AI agents and assistants they've built that basically sit with the doctor in a patient appointment and take notes and take action items from the conversations. The doctor can be present or summarizes medical notes leading up to, so they don't have to read 3, 4, 5 pages before going in. They can just kind of get the synthesis and walk in prepped much faster. And she brought up similarly, like the biggest thing was there's just so many things that an AI cannot action. It has to ask for permission. And that's been really key there, is like, seems maybe even a little more consequential than getting accounting wrong is like medical things, but they're both high severity. You want a human in there who's responsible ultimately for making the call on something.
Yep.
So, but you can make their life still a lot faster and easier.
And it's audit trail too, right? It's not just human in the loop making, but also explaining, hey, as the agent, this is why the agent came to that conclusion or is recommending this action, so that it's easy to give that approval or take that action for the human that is in the loop as well. So yeah, definitely a big part of it.
So going through that, what led or how did DelTek come to these are the areas that are going to add significant value for customers? Were there examples of things you looked at, go like, this could be an area? No, actually, this seems like it would just be slapping AI on it to say AI.
Yeah, I sort of would reflect back on the purposeful comment I made earlier. We tried to look at the workflows that our customers go through within our tools that we felt were maybe the most laborious, but at the same time, the easiest for a non-human to take on. That was sort of the lens that we looked through as we figured out, okay, where are our opportunities? Where are we ripe to sort of leverage this type of technology? So it was a little bit less of, that's not the greatest idea in terms of slapping on AI. It was more, let's find those very high value, very resonant pieces that we can focus on. So that's really what's been driving a lot of our decisions. And when you think of intelligent exploration, content generation, and then of course some of the autonomous stuff to, as cliche as it may sound, free up our customers, our end users to do more value-added things, that's really been our focus.
One thing we talked about earlier before we were on here recording was, given the history of DelTek and the number of projects that you have had access to the data from, there is this like giant data moat of so much insight you have from being able to train on all these projects, tens of thousands of projects over years and years, that it's also kind of looking for, where is that kind of wisdom going to be best applied, and where can you make a real difference in workflow that others can't copy, really, because you have this level of data to train off of that no one else has.
Yeah, you hit it spot on. So many decades worth of project related information from our customers. And of course, we do respect data privacy and anonymity and all of that kind of stuff when we think about this, but we do have a unique opportunity. Again, like a little bit cliche, data's the new oil, but DelTek's got a lot of data from their customers, and we can do some pretty cool things for our customers as it relates to what we can learn from that data and insights we can pull from that data.
So I do want to switch gears, because I could continue to ask about all the nuances of Agentic that you guys have done stuff like that for quite a while. But I think one question that you probably have pretty good insight on is, there's a lot of people who are doing and who are quite advanced, like the team over at DelTek, but there are equal, if not more, people who have boards or CEOs saying like, just do AI now, you need more AI, or who want their team to start using it, but can't figure out how to either frame where would AI work, or how do they even get started. So maybe let's start on the actual just functional teams themselves. How can teams just even start to understand that stuff? Like, this is something that's going to transform not just verticals, but product management itself, quite likely.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's scary, it's exciting, it's uncomfortable, it's opportunistic all at the same time, it's an interesting time we're in. And by no means do I think we or me or DelTek has it all figured out. We still have a long ways to go, but I feel like we're doing some good things to prepare our teams and to put us in a good spot for the transformation. So, just a few things that I think are relevant. You made the comment about boards just saying, hey, we need more AI. Our leadership is certainly saying that for good reason. I think there can often be, and this is just related to product teams, I think this can be pervasive elsewhere, but there can often be sort of this paralysis in terms of, okay, we know we need AI, but there's so many tools out there. There's so many techniques, and it's moving at a pace that it's unreal. Where do I start? And people often think, well, I need to figure all this out before I can jump in. And one of the messages I'm constantly carrying to my team is, just do it. As cliche again as that may sound, find a tool that you think might be interesting and see what happens. Because if you wait till you figure it out or till you master it, guess what? You're never going to make any progress. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we're putting in front of our teams today is, if you got a thing that you can have AI help you with, give it a shot, find a tool, talk about it with our team, and see if it's something we want to make more sort of standard across the team. So that's one of the key things we're doing, to be a little bit more prescriptive, because I understand some people need examples and use cases to solve, is I've been doing these sort of AI call to actions with my team where through my own exploration and whatnot, come across tools, come across techniques, and I'll put them in front of my team. And I say, guess what? I want everybody in the next, 30 days to go out there and use each one of these tools. Come up with a use case, just try it and see what it can do for you and share your stories, your experiences with the broader team so that we can disseminate this to the rest of the team. Those are sort of looser ways to approach this. I will say that, at DelTek, we do have a more formal look at how we're looking at product management, UX, product marketing, and development are going to work together in this new AI augmented world. And we're looking at that in a little bit more formal way. It's definitely evolving and changing as we look at it. But, we have this concept, and I didn't coin this term, called fusion teams is what we're calling it now. So, the mix of engineering, product management, and UX primarily, how they're going to work together in a more fusion oriented way moving forward. Think of it sort of the next generation of Agile, if you will. Fusion is the AI augmented version of Agile. We're trying to figure out the techniques, the processes, the tools to support that and whatnot. So that's been a big push that we've been trying to focus on and progress with as well.
I love the idea of here are tools that seem interesting. Go use them, go try them, and go make something happen. Because at some level, I think it's tough where you can there's more tools every day than you can possibly ever touch. The thing I've tried to talk to my teams about is when we're doing something new or even, when renewals come up maybe for tools that we use, think, do we need this or can we do this better, faster, more efficiently kind of without this?
I think you've hit on something that I don't know that I thought of as explicitly until you were saying it. One of the reasons I do the AI call to actions is that it hits everyone on our team. And I think, we're in a spot of some democratization of this technology that some of our best ideas on some of this stuff might come from places that are not expected or not sort of the usual suspects, if you will. So liberating people or giving people permission, if you will, to just go out and work on this stuff, test the stuff, find tools and whatnot in a very liberated way, I think is a potential for big dividends. Because like I said, that next big idea might come from a place that we don't usually expect it to come from. So I think that's key there as well.
I get to travel in the country a lot and talk to product leads. And it's been interesting seeing, I think there's a commonality of the companies that really have got their teams really moving is at some level you can reduce it down to just be like Nike. Just do it. As trite as that sounds, like just try. Like the worst is going to happen is you're going to fail and you learn and then you try again and you get better. Before we go, any good parting wisdom here of how people should be looking at this stuff?
I think you captured a little bit there with sort of your comments that you just made around sort of the just do it approach. But I guess what I would say, there's all this talk of AI replacing jobs and that sort of thing. And I think that's a real thing that we're going to start to see come to life. What I say to my teams and what I would say to anyone at this point, boy, if you're not using AI, you should really be jumping in and figuring some of this stuff out. Because if you want to end up on the winning side, I think you need to be aware, you need to be equipped, you need to understand sort of the art of the possible. Maybe that's a common sort of perennial recommendation these days, but I think it's more important than ever. And then the other comment I would make is we talked about a crossroads. We can call it an inflection point. We can call it whatever you want, but product teams, engineering teams, product marketing, UX, it's going to be dramatically different for those teams in the months ahead. And I purposely use the word months because of how quickly this stuff is moving. And like I said, it's a little scary, but I think it's also very exciting. And I think those of us that really work to figure out what that new model looks like are going to be in a very good spot, sort of the pole position in that situation. Yeah. So I think people just need to recognize that, hey, from product teams, things are going to transform. You need to be ahead of that and proactive so that you can be in the right spot months down the road as some of these changes start to take shape.
Bret, it's been a pleasure, man. This has been so interesting, so fun to hear about both what you guys are doing with Dela AI as well as kind of like the general move of how products should be looking at this. People will follow up, ask more questions, chat with you more about AI or other stuff. I assume LinkedIn is probably a good place to reach out.
LinkedIn's probably the best way to get a hold of me, definitely.
Otherwise, if you're listening to the episode and you liked it and you thought this was useful, we'd love for you to give us a follow, subscribe to the show, give us a like, write a review if you're on Apple Podcast or if you're on Spotify. It really helps us get the word out. That's how people discover us and how this kind of thing grows. Help us keep doing this and help us get the word out on great product leaders doing awesome, cool product things. Bret, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on and look forward to staying in touch.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Really appreciate the opportunity.